So namaste, everyone. Just checking you can all hear me okay? Good, good. um, Glad to be back here in Satsang, and we've obviously had a long break with being away on retreat, but it's really good to be back. And tonight I wanted to, there's a question that came in that really is a really good example of a similar type of question that we get very, very often. And it really is a good example also of the core and the root of why our suffering continues, even after we might have had a seeing that what we really are is not actually a person at all, that we're not really separate to anything, that we're not this body, or perhaps truer, that we are all the bodies, all the things. What we really are is infinite and formless. So if you're anything like I was on my journey, my pathway, there was a couple of seeings that began to happen more and more often, a clearer and clearer seeing that I'm not what I thought I was at all. And yet somehow this seeing didn't seem to be replacing the illusionary sense of self, the idea that I was a someone moving through time and space, moving towards certain goals, moving towards awakening, all of that, trying to let go of karmic patterns, all of those things. So I want to read this question that was sent in and then just talk about it a little bit, because it really does exemplify exactly where we need to put our attention. And it's a beautifully direct question as well. So absolutely love those. So I'll read this and then we can go from there. It says, hey, Helen, I tried a lot of things in order to improve myself and to get rid of suffering. But every time my mind said, I've got it now, it ended up realizing this is not working. Finally, one day, while listening to your guided meditation, it suddenly occurred to me that there are thoughts and emotions of hurt, anger, complaints, but there wasn't anyone which was being affected by them. It was like thoughts and emotions hypnotized me into believing that they are about someone. But it was not like it ended up right there. Even after knowing that, I ended up getting caught in those thoughts in many situations. So I want to know from you what actually will make the difference from me. Is it checking it again and again that there is no separate one to which these thoughts and emotions belong, or more needed to be done by me? What should be my approach from here on? Thank you. So this is exactly what I'm talking about, this question. I've had some kind of seeing, even if it's just a deep recognition of the infinite silence that's here, a momentary glimpse, a fleeting realization that there isn't any person that these thoughts are happening to. This imaginary entity that says my thoughts, my mind, all of those things. When we see through that it doesn't actually exist, it seems to, and that maybe the presence of thoughts and emotions and sense perception and going on in the body give this sense that there is someone to whom they belong, a being that is defined and separate from everyone else. And we've all heard about famous awakened beings like Ramana, who had this seeing, and that seeing was deep enough to undo kind of all effects of illusion. Even that, though, it took Ramana 3 years to learn to function after that, which you don't hear about. To learn to function as the awakened self rather than as a separate being. That seeing was so total and complete. For most of us, it's not like that. Even after seeing that we're not a separate being, and we can certainly do that later, there'll be some time if you want me to help you recognize that you're not a separate being. I'm absolutely up for that. Some self-inquiry, direct looking and seeing. Once you have seen that you're not a separate being, what is it that then propels that sense of being a separate being, keeps us going back to it? And that's where the root of this question is, what's really going to make the difference actually? Because you probably had that same experience as this questioner where you have a seeing and you're more convinced than ever that only the formless infinite awareness, I'm going to call it lots of names, our real self, self with a capital S, silence, awareness, whatever, probably call it lots of other things. But only that is real, that which is infinite and everywhere and undivided. It's not divided up into lots of other little beings. Otherwise, it wouldn't be infinite. What is it then that's going to make the real difference? What is it that when we do that, it really stops this illusionary self moving forward in its tracks? Because to me, that is the most important thing. After a seeing, and even if you haven't had a seeing yet that you're not a separate being, this advice I'm going to give is still going to be relevant to you. You can still apply it and get really good results. For me, it was very shocking that seeing that I wasn't a separate being, that I wasn't at all what I thought I'd been, that my whole life had been based upon this lie that I thought myself to be a separate being. And perhaps even more shockingly, my whole awakening journey, everything I've been trying to do for 25 years was based on this idea that I'm a separate being. And as shocking as it was to see that that being does not exist, and what actually does exist is the infinite self, then as shocking as that was, amazingly, 5 minutes later, I'd gone back to thinking in terms of being a separate being. How do I get back to that seeing that I just had? How do I get rid of this separate illusionary self? How do I get rid of my karmic patterns? How do I get more peace? How do I find more abundance? How do I feel bliss? All of that is coming from this idea that I'm separate to the thing that I'm trying to get, that I'm a separate being. So even after the most powerful seeing I ever had, 10 or 15 minutes later, I'm back into this old thinking pattern, back into, without even realizing that I'd gone back into that. So are we just doomed then to kind of continue this suffering? Or is there something that we can do? Something that we can look at, remind ourselves of? And for me, it was to firstly come to terms with this old thinking pattern is going to start back up again. Just because I've had a seeing that I'm not at all that thought constructed self, that separate entity that's trying to move towards awakening to some imaginary goal in the future, doesn't mean that that old thought process just stops. Our brains are wired with neural pathways, thinking certain ways, and for a very long time in this body and previous bodies that have come and gone, that thought pattern has been as a separate being. So if you use the analogy of a computer, the programmer of that computer may realize itself to be different to what it thought. You that's using the computer, you might have a realization, wow, I'm not at all who I thought I was. And then you go to use the computer and the computer language is still in the same basic programming that you've been using. It's still in the same format and has to be rewired. It has to be adjusted to your new paradigm of reality, what you have really seen yourself to be. And that was shocking to me. That was really, I'd had this myth or this kind of idea in my mind that if my seeing went deep enough, that I would, that would somehow wipe out all my old thought patterns. And that is true, but I found it to be a very long, drawn-out process with lots of unnecessary suffering in that. That is happening. Each time you have a seeing of any kind, even a nanosecond glimpse of reality, it's that much harder to go back to the old way of thinking. Harder, as in it causes more suffering, doesn't mean we can't do it. Our sense of who we are is shifted, our identity is shifted, a clearer understanding that what we really are is the universe and the potential from which all this arises. And then to go back into the old thinking patterns just really hurts even more, emotionally, sometimes even physically, definitely mentally. And that was perhaps the most difficult place in my awakening. What do I do then if my seeings haven't really penetrated my thinking yet? Because that's still affecting my body. My body's living the effect of my thoughts. And on the whole, I was pushing away all of my thoughts because they were all in separation. I didn't want them. So I had to begin to change the way I was dealing with these. And this is when I want to really answer this question. What's going to really make the difference here? Firstly, the seeing. And if you've had a seeing, great. If you haven't, great. It doesn't really matter. Secondly, to look at those thoughts that come back up. Remember, we said they're going to come back up, whether it's 2 seconds, 2 minutes, 2 days, or 2 years after you're seeing your glimpse of reality. They are going to start back up again, because the only way you can rewire your brain into thinking as the self, in which most of the thought process will drop away, almost all of it, if you want it to, and sometimes all of it. The only way to do that is to have these thoughts run and then to examine them and to decide whether you're still going to give your allegiance to that, your energy, your importance to it. So if you can secondly, first is to see, and secondly accept these thoughts are coming back up, and that's something that has to happen. It has to happen so that you can look at these thoughts and consider if they're still relevant to you now. So you have this seeing that you're formless and infinite, or that there's just silence, or maybe just that there is no body here, no person, no separate entity can be found, only this formless emptiness in the background, and the human body and some thoughts, etc. And in the very next thought that comes, we seem to lose that seeing that we just had, seem to, and attention goes to this thought, how do I get back to that? So right here is probably the first idea that you're going to be challenged with. What have I done wrong to lose that seeing? How do I get back to it? And we have to look at these as they come up and just examine, am I going to follow that thought? If I'm a separate being, if I am separate to that infinite formlessness I've just recognized or heard about, if I haven't recognized it yet, then it makes sense that I have to try to do something to get back to it, or that I could have done something to lose it. But if I am that infinite formless reality, a better question then is it really gone? Actually, have I really lost it? If I am that, can I lose it? And can I do anything to get back to it? Or is my doing anything to get back to it going to make me feel further away, more suffering, more discord, more negative emotion, more disharmony in the body and mind in that? So looking at the thoughts that you have every day, you don't have to examine every single thought, but just really classifying these thoughts into 2 categories. Is this from a separate being? Would a separate being think this? Or is this the infinite being? What would the infinite being think about? Interesting question, not very much. So when I began to sort like this, I found that every thought that came up could be discarded into this not relevant for me now anymore pile. And as I continued to do this, I stopped resisting the thoughts that were coming up, because I was actually looking at them as they come up. Do I need to get back to the self? Do I need to get rid of my egoic sense of self, my separate sense of self? That was another one that caught me. Is the infinite formless silence trying to get rid of anything, least of all our mind, our separate sense of self? Is it doing anything at all? So as I began to consider like this, just to look at these thoughts, if you were in a restaurant and the food was, serve yourself, all you can eat, and there was just all these dishes laid out in front of you, you just walk up to this one and say, I don't really like that one, I'll go to the next one. You wouldn't stand there and get really upset by the dish that you don't like. You just move on to the next one. That one I don't want, don't like it, not relevant. Next. And it became this kind of process for me. And when I looked, the only thing that was still sustaining this illusion, going back into the illusion of this separate sense of self, was really this old habit to try to push it away. And it came down in the end to something very simple. Am I going to welcome the next thought but not believe it? Or am I going to push it away? If I push it away, it has to come back up again. So in a way, you have to make friends again with your mind. And I know as I say that, it probably sounds impossible. I totally understand how crazy mind can be when it's at that point. But mind is crazy, full of ideas, because it's trying to do something it cannot do. Once you come to understand that, it falls into silence. It's trying to get back to the self. It's trying to figure out a way in thoughts to get back to the self that you just experienced. It's trying to figure out a way in thought process to get away from the egoic sense of self, to get rid of it, to even dissolve it. And all of that is based on this idea that you can do something about it. And my mind didn't want to hear that. There's nothing I can do about this. That was the most unsatisfactory realization of all, that the self isn't doing anything, isn't trying to get rid of anything. But with the added realization, it doesn't need to. It's not affected by anything that's happening inside it at all. So the mind isn't happening to anyone, it's just happening. These emotions, as this question has said, are just showing up in the space of my being. They don't belong to anyone. And the moment I try to get rid of them, they seem to belong to me. I seem to be a separate being again. So what is your attitude going to be the next time a thought happens? Of course, you want to stay in that quiet place of seeing, that silence, that peace that we touch in meditation. Of course you are. Of course you want that. But what's the best way to do that? Is it to try to travel somewhere, or to push something away? Or is it simply to question if it's really gone? It seems to be gone. When this thought pops back up, attention goes to that thought, and I begin to experience that thought. I have to get back. Suddenly there seems like there's a me and the self, me and the formless silence again. But if that's not true, we just let that suggested activity of mind, you've got to do something here. If we just let that suggestion come and go and just stay here, just watching the thoughts come and go, then quite quickly some peace will arise again and silence will become more and more obvious. So probably the last thing you want to do in that place is make friends with your mind. But if you can see that it's giving you the thoughts now for you to examine and turn away from, not push away, just kind of turn away. That's not relevant to me. That's relevant to a separate being. That's not relevant to me either. That's only for a separate being. If you begin to examine your thoughts, you don't have to do all of them. Just pick one that comes up often for you. Does that still apply now? If you are not a separate being and you're not separate to the self, if you are the formless self already, even if you're not experiencing that right now, is there anything you can do or need to do to get to that experience. And if we buy that idea that we have to do something, we're off and running again as a separate being, suffering, trying to get somewhere. So what is it that really made the difference for me? It was this, beginning to welcome these thoughts and look at them, not like them, definitely not like them, but I'm finally not going to push them away. The moment I push something away, I'm dividing myself into two and I'll suffer. There's me and what I'm trying to move away from. Immediately I'm divided. Not in actuality, but I feel divided and it hurts. That's what we call suffering, really. So figuring it out in the mind, you said, didn't work at all. Mind can understand it, but it can't live this realization. Mind can come to understand that we're not actually separate. But then everything it tries to do from there is in separation, everything. Only everything it suggests from that point forward is in separation. And I'm not saying this to make you go to war with your mind. I'm trying to say this to help you understand. It thinks it's got to try to help you now to keep this realization or go back to it, this glimpse. So it's kind of like struggling in quicksand. The more you struggle, the faster you sink. If you just kind of sit there and watch this urge come and go, sit there metaphorically, to try to do something to get back to peace, you'll find that peace immediately presents itself in that. Because in that, you're living as the self in that moment. It doesn't need to do anything to get back. So what are the most troublesome thoughts that you have? Probably that you haven't had a seeing yet. That you need to do something about that. Or that you have had a seeing and you've lost it. Or that you're not worthy or ready to have a seeing of what you really are. All of those ideas, do they apply to a separate being? Or do they apply to the self, the infinite self? What problem can infinite formless awareness really have anyway? Does it even need to wake up? Is it trying to reach enlightenment awareness? The stillness, another name for it, the beingness, the consciousness. What does it actually need to achieve, really? Just looking like this softly, so we're not pushing thoughts away, we're also not believing them automatically. And in the not pushing them away, we'll find that we have a choice. We'll have more energy free in that moment to not automatically go into believing. We can just simply let them come and go. That was what actually made the difference for me. And that became, my mind said, oh God, now I've got to sort through all of my thoughts, all of them. This is going to take forever. This is going to be hard. It's going to be boring. Do I really have to do this? Why can't I just get one of the Ramana seeings, that kind of obliterates all separation straight away? But actually it became something extraordinarily joyful, peaceful, blissful. The more I welcomed these thoughts, examined them, and just gently turned away, the more peace I felt. Every time I just gently turned away from something, the more peace stayed, and the more constant it became, the deeper it became, the more it began to develop into love, a deep sense of contentment, and then love, and then joy, and then bliss, and all the other things that we hear about. So this is something that starts off feeling like a chore, but actually becomes the most extraordinary thing to simply look and examine and leave it be. Not pushing it away, not believing it. I'm just leaving that thought where it is. It's nothing to do with me. I don't have to do anything with this at all. See if you can try that out the next time. Maybe even right now, mind is saying, you're not going to remember this. You're not going to be able to apply this. You aren't really understanding this. Whatever it's saying to you, It's all right now while you're in satsang, but later it won't work. Whatever it's saying right now, or later, if it's gone quiet, your mind, maybe later on when it starts back up. Can you examine that thought the way you'd look at a menu in a restaurant? Don't really like that. I do like that. That's not for me. And you'll find everything for you is off the menu over here. And over this side of the restaurant, there is an all-you-can-eat buffet that goes on forever. Infinite number of choices. And each one is even more delicious than the previous one. And it's like the chef knew exactly what you like and has cooked all of your favorite dishes to perfection. And so that you could never get bored. We just keep reading off this same old menu. So can you go towards your mind? Can you embrace it a little bit more? Can you be like the self that just lets it exist inside? It isn't really working to push it away anyway, is it? That has never actually worked to resist our thoughts. It's never worked for any being ever in the entire history of humanity, nor will it ever. And yet we keep doing this one thing. So you have a seeing. Can you accept that it might just be a seeing because these thoughts have to come back up? It won't be permanent until you've looked at these thoughts. Each thought you look at and turn away from, that energy that you had invested in pushing away that thought can now rest here as peace. This is how you get your peace back, piece by piece, pun intended, so that you begin to feel deeply rested, content, and most importantly, perhaps, whatever mind says to you, you lose the ability to push it away or to grab a hold of it. Your only option is to kind of go, what is this thing here, this thought? Does it apply to me? Can you imagine if you didn't have the ability to resist anything anymore? If that had somehow fallen away just by practicing this? You also didn't have the ability to grab hold of something and then have to experience losing it again either. That's really what suffering is, pushing away, grabbing a hold. And if we're just doing this with the thoughts that come, what's this about then? What's this one saying? Then you cannot be pushing and pulling while you're examining. It's literally impossible. Just a new habit to form here. So that's about as succinct as I can say it. Welcome the thoughts. Don't push them away. We all think that we dislike mind, that we're suffering because our mind is noisy. I held on to that idea for a very long time, and I was really surprised to find that the only reason I was suffering is because I was pushing away those thoughts. The only reason. That I could be peaceful, joyful, blissful with thousands of thoughts or none at all. With negative emotions, positive ones, with abundance or lack thereof, still feel the same. Because it's really more about what I'm doing with the phenomena in my experience or not doing than the phenomena, the thoughts themselves. So I have a long answer, but I hope that does help with that. I'll read, got two more questions here. If anybody would like to raise their hand, I'll come to them next. If you have a question or would like to do some self-inquiry, or you're having a challenge that you need help with, feel free to put your hand up. This one says, hi, Helen. When I communicate truth as I feel and see it in the moment, in therapy sessions and with friends, I feel at times like my language is too complicated or that I can't convey adequately in a way that can be received by them, like I'm confusing them and I'm unable to penetrate through their psyche. I don't mean that I force feed people, but just in trying to convey what I can feel, I know it must only be a lack of belief in me, excuse me, but I'm not sure how to frame a contemplation question. Maybe something like, is it true my words confuse people? Or is it true my communication is confusing to understand? I'd love your thoughts, and thank you so much for answering my questions. So much appreciation and gratitude. Lots of love. Well, I'd like to ask you why you want to communicate the truth in that moment. If you are trying to communicate the truth to help someone get it, to help someone feel better, to help someone come out of suffering, then that is going to backfire on you, believe it or not. That is going to, because even in that, you are subtly trying to change the experience of the person that you're talking to, whether that's in a therapy session or in a satsang like this. And I know that may seem strange, so well, why am I talking then? Well, I'm talking because what I'm saying is true. And there's no intention for anything to change with the reception of these words. There's just, this is what wants to be expressed right now with no other intention at all. And in that open expression, then those words tend to hit home much easier. So I'd suggest looking at why you're trying to express the truth. Nothing wrong with that at all. But is it because it's what you want to do, what feels joyful, what feels free? Or is it because some other intention has crept in there, even a really noble intention to try to help someone wake up? For me, I had to let go of that. If I try to help you wake up, then I am affirming inside that you are not already the self, not already the awakened self. And then my communication has to be ineffective. So only if I talk from my own joy, where there's no trying to get anywhere from that, is it effective. So I'd urge you to look at that. The other thing that could get in the way of this communication is slight unworthiness within you. If you are feeling that you are talking about this, but you don't really fully feel that you've seen it, or that you shouldn't be talking about it, something like that, that will also dilute the intention and the strength of the words that are coming out. They'll be coming from the level of thoughts and not the power of the truth. And they cannot be received well by that person. The other reason is maybe that person just isn't ready to hear it. And maybe that you literally cannot penetrate their psyche at that point. And even the Buddha couldn't do that. Nobody could, because that person is too convinced still that their thoughts are talking about them, that they are this separate being. And that illusion is very powerful. It seems very real, so real that it wouldn't even be questioned. And sometimes when I'm talking to people, they literally can't hear, or their mind blanks out, something starts making a lot of noise so that they can't hear. So look at those three things and just see if any of those are going on. And truth quite often expresses itself in a very, very simple way. The more simple, the better. Again, check if it's complex. If it's feeling complex, you're also going to lose people. It's got to be something that can help someone in a moment where they're really suffering, something simple that they can do. Like everything I've just said, we could boil it down to stop resisting your thoughts. You know, that one sentence that might make a difference in that. So hope that helps. I wouldn't really feel that you need to contemplate on this. You can, of course, if you want to, but it's probably one of those things that I've already said that's just messing with the communication there. Okay, I'll go to this last question here. Dear Helen, I have some resistance coming up when I believe that other human beings want to come closer to me. I'm not sure if I'm scared of intimacy outside of a romantic relationship, or what else could I be scared of? How can I acknowledge my resistance without hurting the feelings of the other human being when there is only one being in the first place? How would you experience love that feels too intimate for you? Thank you for your help. So I have some resistance coming up when I believe that other human beings want to come closer to me. Well, I think the first thing to do there is to check that they actually do want to come closer to you. It's very normal to be scared of intimacy. I think pretty much we all are, of being open and vulnerable and available to someone else, whether that's in a deep friendship, a romantic relationship, as you said, even being intimate with our own selves, really looking at what we're running away from, what we're hiding from in our own selves. And I don't think I've ever really met anyone that wasn't scared of that or resisted that initially. And it takes a kind of a practice, a habit to get used to being closer to someone, especially your own self. So what could you be scared of? Well, fear of intimacy for most people is because they don't feel inside that they are who that person that they're going to get closer to would want to see. They feel that they are going to be discovered as something not good enough, not worthy enough. They feel that if they are going to be intimate with someone emotionally, anything like that, that they're going to physically, emotionally, sexually, mentally, all of the above, energetically, they're going to be discovered as someone who's not good enough, not worthy of that. So that would be my first thing to investigate. Are you scared of what that person's going to find? Whether it's a friendship, romantic relationship, anything at all, because that was certainly the case for me. This deep-seated feeling that I'm not who I need to be. And if I let people close to me, they're going to discover that. And I was terrified of that. And again, I've not really met anyone else that wasn't scared of that at first, at least. How would I experience love? How would you experience love that feels too intimate for you? Well, I don't think I really could experience love that's too intimate now, because the idea even of intimacy is in duality and two-ness, but I know what you're trying to ask there instead. That if there was some feeling of it being too intimate for me, it would always be a sign that I had to look at something within myself and examine that. So why am I resisting? Why is this seeming like too much right now? Why am I resisting this? Why am I pushing this away? I've had to look at that several times, sometimes for quite some time. Letting someone love you really means, well, letting them love you unconditionally really means letting them see you as you are, knowing that they're not going to judge you, not going to try to compare, not going to try to change you. And that is different to what most human beings have experienced, isn't it? I love you if, or I like you as long as you do this, or make me feel this way, or I approve of you, I'll give you validation, I'll stay with you if. All of those things come into play normally. Now, there isn't the sense of two beings coming together for me. There's just this immensity of love. And these bodies keep coming closer in that love is very appealing. And it just lets down, your guard just gets let down in that, because there's no need to defend yourself. Who we thought we were is utter fiction. Who we really are is the perfect, infinite, formless reality already. Your mind will look at your mind and body and say, my mind and body isn't perfect. But if you imagine a potter's wheel and the thing's turning and you're sculpting this, whatever it is that you're sculpting, it's always perfect as it is right now and in a process of becoming at the same time, isn't it? So you could say it's perfectly unformed right now. It's just a lump of stuff on this potter's wheel, and then it's getting bigger and bigger, and I'm shaping it, and then I'm hollowing it out, and then I'm eventually it's ready, and I'm going to bake it and then paint it, glaze it, all of that. And at each point along the way, it's perfectly that thing that it is. Mind would say it's not finished, it's not good enough until it's finished article. But the self can enjoy every step of that process. So wherever your body and mind are at, that's absolutely okay for the self, isn't it? Wherever your finances are at, your career, your love life, all of that. It's not being measured against some future moment. And when you stop doing that, there's nothing that's too intimate for you. My gut feeling is there's some unworthiness hiding in there underneath. So check that out. Okay, we'll go to Valerie. Thanks for waiting there, Valerie. Whenever you're ready. You're still muted there.
Thank you, Helen.
There we go. Hi.
Hi. Oh, I'm getting feedback. Oh, wait, it stopped. Okay, good.
Okay. we can't hear it here, so don't. It's hopefully not.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. I found you a couple months ago, and you've just helped me so much, and I appreciate that. And so anyway, I want to question, because when you were talking to the person before me, or the question that you read, and you mentioned unworthy, I got the biggest hit in my gut. And of course, throughout the whole satsang so far, I'm just feeling this clenching inside me. And I almost put my hand down because I don't want to do this, but then I want to.
I'm really glad you left it up, because
it was very
to do this with me, but like, you're not going to let that stop you, are you? You're ready to be done with this, right?
So ready to be done with this. And I do something, I teach a yoga class a couple of days a week, and more I just feel more pressure. I'm not good enough. I don't want to do this. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? I don't want to do this. All this stuff in my head.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what you were saying at the beginning. That means I'm a separate self. But if there's anything you could do to help me process this, I'd appreciate it.
But let's do some contemplation on this idea that's underneath all of this. So what's that gut clenching? What's that, if it could speak, that feeling in your gut, what would it say to you? Would it tell you that you're not safe, or would it say that you're not good enough? What would it say if it could speak to you? I know it's a strange thing to ask, but it's kind of this fight or flight thing going on deep down inside our body, isn't it?
Yeah.
And ready for emergency just in case, because, something like that.
So it's probably safety, more than any. I mean, it could be worthiness, it could be safety, and it could be judgment, like fear of judgment. I'm very harshly judge myself.
Yeah.
It could be just afraid little girl to be seen.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's coming up now. The more you go deeper into what you really are, seeing what you really are, the more this idea becomes very irritating. It becomes very opposite to what you're seeing yourself to be. Even if you haven't had a big shift or anything like that, just hanging around non-duality begins to soak in. And this idea that I'm not, there's something wrong with me. And if I carry on doing these classes and things like that, I'm going to, at some point, somebody's going to call me out and find out I'm this big fraud or something, right? Something like that in thoughts, isn't it? And I should just stop this. And it's really not safe. For me, worthiness and safety were so linked in themselves, that I'm not good enough and I need to be better, but because I can't quite seem to be better, I feel unsafe, and around it goes. Can you get a sense of it? Let's question this feeling then that you're not good enough, or there's something wrong with you? What would be the way that you, is it a sense that there's something wrong with you or that you're not good enough? What would be the words you put to it?
I compare myself to others. I tell myself that I don't know enough, or kind of an imposter like.
Yeah.
Also, I tell myself that my brain, I can't plan because in the moment is when it usually comes out for me. But
Mhm.
literally days ahead, I will start dreading it.
Yeah.
And then I can't think about what I'm going to do, and I can't plan it. And I'll try to tell myself, well, just wait, and then I'll show up. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's terrible. Last time it was terrible. So it's like, oh, that's it. I can't trust myself.
There we go. That's it. You feel the tug of that inside. So let's go with that then. We're just going to turn that into a question, and we're going to use the question. We're not going to do any hard work. We're just going to ask this question and see all of the answers that come, all of them. So when we ask this question, is it really true? I can't trust myself. You might hear a sound in your environment. You might have a gurgle in your belly. You might have an itch on your foot. Obviously, there might be thoughts. All of these we're going to class them as answers. We're just going to be open. So you're not doing any work here. We're just asking this question and seeing what happens. So every now and again, just gently coming back to this question. Is it true I can't trust myself? Because we see that some part of us, our body is telling us, I really do feel this is true. So we're going to just question it. So I'm just going to ask you to share with us any answers that come. And there might be long periods without any answers. There might be a million thought answers to that question right now. Of course it's true. And of course it's not true. Something like that.
Is it true? I cannot trust myself.
Yeah.
There's a bird chirping outside.
That's an answer. Yeah. It's not the kind of answer that our mind would normally accept, but we're just open to whatever happens when we ask the question. It is an answer. Yeah.
Is it true? I cannot trust myself.
Because while we believe that idea, we have to keep experiencing it. And the only way out of it is to begin to challenge it. Well, is it true, actually? I'm just kind of curious. We're not working hard here, you and me. We're just sitting with this question. And if no answers show up, that's fine too. We'll just sit here quietly. That's okay.
My throat feels dry.
Yeah, so that's kind of a physiological answer. Whatever answer we get, we're just going to do our best to let that happen and come back to the question anyway.
Is it true? I cannot trust myself.
You're doing really well here.
Is it true? I cannot trust myself.
And we don't have to work hard. We're just hanging out with this question, you and me. Don't need to do anything.
I'm a hard worker.
That's why I'm saying it, because I can feel in mind going, I'm not doing this right. Something like,
Is it true? I cannot trust myself.
just sitting with your popcorn metaphorically, and we're just watching this movie, see what happens when we ask this question. Yeah.
Is it true? I cannot trust myself.
Just the question is more powerful than anything. How did your body feel when you asked this question?
Well, at first it was feeling tight through here,
Uh-huh.
but everything is sort of loosening up a little bit.
That's good. So it's a kind of an answer in a way, isn't it? Because if I really know I can trust myself, if I really get that, my body might begin to relax a little bit.
Is it true? I cannot trust myself. itching.
Yeah, that's a kind of answer too.
Is it true I cannot trust myself?
We're just kind of curious, really. Let's just be curious. Like, is it really true? Actually, I've experienced it is, but I really want to find out. Actually,
I just smiled.
yeah.
Is it true? Is it really true? Is it really true?
It feels nice even just to ask the question, doesn't it? Not to be just buying this idea automatically.
Especially to ask it that way and not, is it true?
Yeah, because mind would take the question and make it into some kind of hard work and all of that. So we're just hanging out in curiosity. Is this true?
Is it true? I just had an exhale.
Yeah. There's a kind of answer.
True. Is it true? Is it really true? My mind just said no.
That's okay. It's a thought answer.
Is
And
it
even though
really-
mind has said that, we're just going to stay with the question anyway, because we want a real deep knowing and experiential answer. Nothing wrong with thoughts, but if we hang out with the thoughts only, we have to keep experiencing this over and over.
Is it really true that I can't trust myself?
Does the question feel different to you now than when you first asked it?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it really true? Is it really true?
I can't trust myself. Is that true, actually?
Is it really true? I can't trust myself.
You're doing so well here. You're doing amazing. And the cool thing is you're helping everyone else too.
Is it really true? I can't trust myself.
How do you feel now?
I feel a lot better. I feel more open. I feel less constricted. I feel a lot of vibration around my body.
When we're believing a thought, it kind of locks our energy system in one place and it can't move. And when we start to question, you feel energy starts to move again, doesn't it? And let's just stay with the question a few more minutes. We're getting to the good bit now, so we want to milk it.
Is it really true? I can't trust myself. Can I really not trust myself? I just feel a lot of energy in my body. Is it really true? I can't trust myself.
You see what we're doing here? We're just hanging out with the question, seeing what happens. We're not doing anything at all.
Yeah.
Insights may come, stuff may happen, thoughts might come and go. We're just, whatever answer comes, we're just staying with the question.
Is it really true? I cannot trust myself.
Can you see that your body is now experiencing that it's not true?
Yeah.
I can trust myself. Your body's kind of, on some level, this tension is this idea that I can't. I have to maintain this someoneness. I have to be someone in particular just so I don't get caught out. But as we ask this question, we might not even have an epiphany up here. That doesn't really matter. But here, our body's responding experientially. No, that is not true at all.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
after 5 minutes or so with this question. Can you imagine after 5 months with this question, how good you feel?
Right. I appreciate this because I've tried it for 5 seconds probably. I appreciate getting to experience this with you because it helps me understand how to do this process. And I really think that is the question.
Yeah.
Need
As
to
soon as you
con-
said it, there was this kind of, that's the one, right? I could feel that's the question. Can't trust myself. Can you see that you've been experiencing the idea that it is true? You've been experiencing, I can't trust myself.
Yeah.
Your life has been the reflection of that idea in various ways. Second
Yeah.
guessing yourself, judging yourself,
Exactly.
all of that is coming from this root assumption, isn't it? I can't trust myself. Who I am is not already good enough, authentically okay. It's
Yeah.
not okay to be myself. Something like that at the core of all of this.
Right. For sure.
So you can either believe a thought and experience it in any particular moment, or you can question it. You can't do both at the same time. And
Yeah.
your body will be telling you in any particular moment which one you're doing. If it's
Right.
tight and tense, your attention's gone automatically with this idea.
Right.
Or if your experience sucks,
I appreciate that question. I mean, coming up with that question because I think I've thought of it every now and then, but I think that is the big question to go with.
if I look back at my whole life, the undertone, the undercurrent of it all was, who do I need to be in this moment to be safe? Who do
Yeah.
I need to pretend to be? Or, this chameleon that's constantly trying to change
Yeah,
to be who I think you need me to be in this moment so that you don't
exactly.
find me out or something like that.
Right. That's it.
And then finally experiencing that stopping just for a moment. Well, is it true? Can't trust myself just as I am right now.
Yeah.
Oh, finally, I put down this heavy burden.
Right.
And the more you sit with this question, you can do it like a meditation. You can just do it while you're out and about, while you're walking around the supermarket. Can I trust myself? Is it true? Anytime you start to suffer, somehow attention has just gone back to this idea. And you just go,
Yeah.
oh, I'm doing that again. Let me just come back to the question gently, no blame. It's just a habit, isn't it, to believe this thought. Maybe we didn't know we could question it. So just gently turning around this habit to automatically believe, because then you experience that. And it seems very real then. But your experience, a horrible class, is coming from this idea. What will your classes look like then from this deep relaxation and understanding that I am perfectly adequate and could not be otherwise? That's just going to ooze out into everything you do, isn't it?
That would be awesome.
It's happening right now, though, isn't it? Not would be. Right now, you're just
Right.
oozing this out. Don't put it in the future.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank
Wow.
you.
What a wonderful demonstration. How do you feel now?
I feel great. I feel good.
Yeah. A little bit of joy creeping in, maybe?
Yeah. That's the last thing to creep in for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's totally okay, isn't it? When we're free of these ideas, our natural state is peace and joy. And it doesn't take a lot to get rid of them. I just need to keep coming back to the question until this idea is gone for good. Until my experience is reflecting back to me, who I am is totally okay and safe, more than good enough. Yeah. Could never not be good enough. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being such a good demonstration there of contemplation too. Always good to see.
That.
Yeah, wonderful. Have fun with the question and keep playing with it each day, add it into your routine. If you do it before you go to bed at night, you'll sleep like a baby. Well, you won't wake up every 3 hours for feeding, but you know what I mean. You'll sleep deeply. Why do people say that? I'll sleep like a baby. Anyway,
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Nice to talk to you.
You too.
Okay, so we'll leave it there for today. And thank you once again for all your questions that came in, and for Valerie, your wonderful contemplative question that we could explore. And hopefully you can see that coming out of suffering might be a lot easier, because what we just did might be a lot easier than you think. What we just did is exactly what I was saying at the start, just taking this idea and looking at it. Well, you don't have to automatically believe it or push it away. And that's what most of us do. I'm going to believe this idea, hold on to it because it feels true, or I'm going to push it away. So in contemplation, we're just looking at this idea. Is it actually true? I've always just assumed it is. I'd really like to actually find out. Worst case scenario, I find out it is true, at least I know. But actually what we find every time is it's utterly false. And then there's just peace and love and joy in that. So thank you. Namaste.